for another episode of the Cozy Corner of Cinema, episode 192, being recorded on Friday, December 5th, 2025, on a frigid morning. It is quite cold in here. I woke up and getting out of bed, boy oh boy, was no easy feat. But we also don't want to just stay in bed all day. There's so much to get done, there's so much to do. That you got to kind of find that balance between lounge and life. Sorry, I'm stepping away from the microphone for a second. I got the cats running around here. They seem ambivalent to the cold. But yes, we are at the end of 2025. We have a couple of weeks left to accomplish what we need to wrap up our year-end watching, our year-end reading in writing, and to not wait and make any sort of goals starting on the 1st of 2026, but instead to start them now, start them today, so that we can roll over confidently. If you're trying to get uphill, you're not going to be, you're gonna have a much more difficult time starting at the bottom of the hill. What you're gonna want to do, I apologize, forgot to silence my telephone. You're gonna want to, run and then go up, or if you're in a car, and like say you got a steep hill you're going up, then you want to, have some sort of momentum to push yourself up. It'll make things far more easier than if you're starting at the bottom. But anyways, I hope you guys are all doing very well, staying warm in these frigid conditions. The temperature in here is 61. The heat is on, and the space heater is on just for a bit. And it's great. The cats are going to get their winter fur in. They're going to look even more precious than they do now. And it's great at the end of a long day, not even necessarily at the end of a long work day, but let's say if you have errands to run or you have obligations you need to attend to, getting home at the end of the day, excuse me, getting home at the end of the day, getting on the couch under a blanket, a hot beverage, maybe some coffee or some tea or hot cocoa, putting on a film or reading a book or doing something that really kind of brings you the nirvana that we try and aspire to every single day. It's been really, really wonderful to just be staying in and to be kind of refraining from going out a whole lot. There are some obligations that need to be fulfilled. There are plenty of films to be seen, so I'm not a total hermit just yet. But if I'm leaving the house, it's got to be for a good reason. I'm not going to be out just dilly dallying. There's just far too much to get done. But anyways, with that said, yeah, it's sort of like different times of the year. You really want to take in certain films that will benefit that time of the year to give you a real greater appreciation and a real I say physical experience. So we're in the winter right now. We're gonna be watching a lot of winter films. Really kind of get into the mindset and the mood of some of these characters. And it's funny. I think I mentioned before last time that Christmas is the one holiday where those films I don't excuse me. Gosh, I got the coffee right here, but my throat's still a little dry, so bear with me as I try to enunciate the best I can and not sound too hoarse. But what was I saying before? Yeah, it's like in the summer you're going to be watching a lot of films that take place, of course, in the summer. A lot of films dealing with the heat. I talked earlier this year about The Surfer with Nick Cage, another one of my favorites of the year. And that's a good summer film. You really feel the oppressive heat on that, especially on a hot day. And it brings to mind other films like Wake and Fright, of course, The Endless Summer, Big Wednesday, not necessarily in terms of any kind of tonal or mood consistencies, but these films you really kind of just feel the heat around them. Maybe Big Wednesday because it's different times of the year, so you're not necessarily in one kind of setting, but something closer like Wake and Fright or like I said before, The Endless Summer, which I've never actually seen The Endless Summer 2. I didn't. What year did that come out? That was 94, and The Endless Summer is 66. The Endless Summer is just one of those great documentaries. Just real. Anybody who's interested in documentary filmmaking, that's a must see. And actually, on the other side of the room, I have a book that I'm real looking forward to jumping into about, I think, the history of documentaries. So that'll be really, really interesting to read. Reading a few books right now, making good pace with those, but I try not to rush through books either. There are, it seems like somebody, I forgot somebody else who pointed it out, but they were talking about this constant need to always be rushing through something, or it's like you're waiting for something and then you're just waiting for it to be over, no matter what it is. You're reading a book and you're just trying to get to the end. You're watching a film, you're just trying to get to the end. Maybe, or it's something more day to day where it's like, oh, you're in your car, you're just trying to get to work, and when you're at work, you're just trying to get to the end of the day, and when you're at the end of the day, you're just trying to get home, and you're just trying to get these dishes done, and then da 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 da, and that goes on. That goes on. And not being fully aware and not really kind of appreciating and realizing the moment. So these books that I'm reading right now, I'm really enjoying both of them, and I'm really going to take my time with them. Not try to rush through. It can be difficult though. Sometimes with right now I'm reading a book on. I'm not going to go grab it. It's in the other part of the room, but a book on the history of Italian cinema that I believe was published or copyrighted in the early 2000s, I believe. So it's only going to go up to a certain point. But I got to pause 1 second. Bear with me. All right, and I'm back. After some time away, I completely lost my train of thought. I don't even remember what I was talking about, and the recorder that I used does not allow me to play back previously, so let's just move on from there. I think I was talking a bit about seasonal films, films that can be watched at certain times of the year, and Christmas, above all else, I think is the one holiday where those films. I think I may have mentioned this last time, so forgive me, but I those films I don't typically watch year round. I think if there's a certain Christmas theme or a Christmas kind of setting, um, for whatever reason, I think it's best to kind of watch that because I mean Christmas itself is such a cozy holiday. The end of the year is such a cozy time of the year, so I think getting into that mentality with these films can be can really kind of get you into that mindset. So if you are watching a different time of the year, you got to have that December mindset, which isn't a bad mindset to have, but it's also more of like a comfort thing. I'm just sort of like, hey man, I'm watching these films at this time of the year. Everything is full circle, and I apologize, my throat is dry for whatever reason. I'd actually pause it again for that reason. I don't know why, but either way. Moving on from there. Also, I think I mentioned before on the show, I'm having trouble with my laptop uploading these episodes to Spotify. So if you are curious to listen, YouTube is the where they'll be up first. I don't know the reasoning. I'm not that tech savvy, admittedly. So I don't really know why it's giving me issues. It's just not allowing me to. But I am able to on a different laptop. So I've been doing it that way primarily. So if episodes are a little bit slower to uploading to Spotify, that is part of the reason. And yeah, no, it's funny. I was thinking about these offbeat kind of Christmas films, and I think probably a well-known one from 19 what year is it? 1950 something. 1964, I'm sorry. I think it's a well-known film. It's a strange one, which was on the mind this time of the year. It's called Santa Claus Conquers the Martians. And this is a well-known film. It's a public domain film, so it's very easily accessible. This film was it's been talked about, considered like one of the so bad it's good, and I've talked about before how much I really don't like that term. I really don't like. I think there's been how do I want to put this? There's films like this which are bizarre, but they're fun. They're like you watch it and you get into the context of when this was made. This is a very low budget film. I mean, what we have here is we have Santa Claus who is treated like a celebrity. I guess he is a celebrity, but he's treated as if he is like just a common sort of thing. Because he is being interviewed at the beginning of the film. Maybe not the beginning of the film. I'll be completely honest with you. I did not watch this film. So I'm going solely off memory here. So if I get some information incorrect, just bear with me. But anyways, he's being interviewed on TV they're talking about the upcoming holiday season. He's there with Mrs. Claus. I think he was like smoking a pipe too. It was just very funny. Um, but anyways, some Martians, on Mars. They're watching it because they're mad, man. They're the kids on Mars. They're watching TV. They're not, they want Santa Claus. They want to, they're like, we don't even have Christmas on Mars. And these Martians are like, you know what? Let's get Santa Claus. We're gonna bring him to Mars. It's bizarre set design, nonetheless. I mean, at the beginning of this film, the makeup and the set design itself is actually not bad. I think it's the makeup that's very bizarre. Everyone's green like a Martian, but the face paint in particular always stood out as kind of gross. Extreme. They have this older guy who is, I don't even know what he's doing there. He's like the wizard or something. He's like the leader of it. And he's saying you have to get Santa and bring him to Mars. The costumes look, I mean, in high definition, they look thrown together, but they are inventive. This is a couple years before Star Trek, and this idea of just like going to, a planet and picking up something, or like going to a planet to like investigate something. A common occurrence on Star Trek. They would go down to a planet, see what's going on, but it's not as it's much lower budgeted than something like the original Star Trek, which I think was able to kind of make up for its maybe production shortcomings in just some really strong writing. And when I say strong writing, I mean more so in the plots themselves than the dialogue. Because some of that stuff, Star Trek, the original series, I think is as dated as it was ahead of its time in terms of thematics, in terms of relationships. It's just that the writing and you watch scenes out of context and it's like, oh, this is kind of corny and cheesy, but it's like, you gotta give it, you gotta watch this with the mindset of when it came out. But anyways, with Santa Claus Conquers the Martians, here I am still talking about this film. But so they don't know what Santa is the real Santa. Because, you have, Santa's on the streets, raising money for charity and stuff, or Salvation Army. Is it the Santas that do the Salvation Army? I always forget. I don't. Funny, I don't even really see people hanging out for the Salvation Army anymore, collecting donations. That much anymore. You used to see them all the time. But anyway, so they're like, all right, we're gonna go get Santa. But they end up getting these two kids because they're like, we don't know which one is the real Santa, so we got to get these two kids to tell us where the real Santa is. And these kids are they're not very concerned that there's Martians there. They're just kind of like, all right, well, there's Martians here. I mean, hey, we're in a world where, I mean, do you believe in Santa? Great, cool, so whatever, it's fine. They can just kind of deal with these extraterrestrial beings coming to them, excuse me, asking where Santa Claus is. So, of course, Santa Claus is in the North Pole. They go to the North Pole, and Santa, he doesn't really even put up a fight. He's like, you know what? All right, let's go on the spaceship. Bring these kids along. Along the way, there's like a giant robot that they have to get past. There's like I think a polar bear they're trying to get past. Man, it's like strange stuff like this where the film is not that long, but it does kind of feel padded out at times because it's not as over the top. Well, no, that's not true. It is over the top, but it's not quite as grandiose as maybe one would expect from a film like this. If I told you the plot now, it's like, well, they're dealing with a giant polar bear, which is clearly a guy in a suit, but that's fine. And they're dealing with a giant robot. You'd think this sounds crazy, but then you watch it. It's just it's a little dull at times. And I think the title and maybe some of the concepts are what throw people off. Where it's a cult film more so in just some head scratching moments where you're like, what are we doing now? There's a giant robot that's here, and like the Martians are there too, just fighting the robot. The robot's taking Santa Claus. It's like, what? And even when Santa gets there, and if I'm spoiling the film, well, I apologize. If you're really concerned about Santa Claus Conquers the Martians being spoiled for you, then I suggest you maybe come back to this episode if you choose to after you've seen the film. But from there is when it kind of drags. Santa Claus is there. He's very willing and ready to help these Martians out, and things get very low key. There is, from what I remember, there's another Martian who I think is like kind of he just doesn't like Santa and he's trying to mess the whole thing up. And from there it's just strange visuals. It's very very kiddie. I mean, like it's not even a kids movie. This is like a baby's film. But I think the charm in this is, for one, the sets. I mean, for how low budget of a film this is, I mean, I think the costumes and the sets for what they are they're inventive. They are. I've seen so many like low budget films, even from the 50s, from the 60s, where they're just shooting it, outside wherever they can, and that's fine. Different finances calls for different situations. But I remember I was watching this one film, and they were talking about, this is a 70s film, so we're going ahead a little bit, but they were, I think it was a 70s film, maybe it was a 60s film. I think it was The Cutthroats. I believe was the name of it. But yeah, they're like, oh, we're in 1940s Germany, and they clearly just filmed it in California, in modern day California. I'm like, there's palm trees everywhere. What the hell are you talking about, Germany? And then there's strange stuff with like clown sex in that movie. It's a strange film. But my point is, though, is that, I mean, listen, man, it all doesn't look too bad. I mean, like I was talking about before, the stuff with the robot, I think is kind of cool. The polar bear, yeah, it's a guy in a suit, but that whole set, I think, is nice. And I think that the context of this film releasing, it's made for a drive-in. It's got a charm in its own right, where it's, I don't even want to say misguided. It's actually not the right term, but it's like you watch this film and you got to kind of like scratch your head of just like man, what a bizarre concept of a movie. Because there's also The Santa Claus from, I think, 59. I don't know what year that is. I know that was first. That was 19. Was it 59? Yes, it was. Also known as Santa Claus versus the Devil, which I have not seen that film. I think that's a Mexican film to my knowledge. And there's also Santa Claus and the Ice Cream Bunny, which came out after the fact. That was from 72. And that is bizarre as well. I mean, it is from a primarily adult filmmaker. And when I say adult, I mean, to my knowledge, I think it's a lot of like nudie cutie, softcore kind of stuff. This director, Barry Mahone, and you look at some of his credits. Well, this was his final film from 1972. He passed away in 1999. But you look at some of his credits, and he has done films like Forbidden Flesh. He did The Diary of Knockers McCalla, Fanny Hill Meets Lady Chatterley, Sex Club International, A Good Time with a Bad Girl. Even if the movies aren't good, these are good titles. Hot Skin, Cold Cash. Ooh, I'd see that movie. Nude A Go Go, Nude in the Window, Nude Scrapbook, The Art School for Nudists. I believe Something Weird put out a lot of these, so I imagine that a lot of these may even get re-released on, when they do their AGFA kind of collections. And then he did Santa Claus and the Ice Cream Bunny, which it takes place on a beach, and then halfway through the film, it kind of like goes to another film, Thumbelina, and this, I mean, it's an hour and a half, but then it's like, what? So he's in Florida in this one, and the ice cream bunny is there, but there's no ice cream. There's no ice cream in it. I don't know why the bunny's there, man. And then And then they go to this theme park, which kind of, it feels like an ad for the theme park. And I should also say up front, I've not seen this film. I'm just going off what I have seen. So I'm not, I should probably preface that up front. I have seen Santa Claus Conquers the Martians, but I have not watched Santa Claus and the Ice Cream Bunny. So maybe I should watch that, and maybe I should come back to this one, because I don't think it's appropriate for me to talk about either Santa Claus versus the Devil or Santa Claus and the Ice Cream Bunny if I have not seen these films. But let's go back to Santa Claus Conquers the Martians, and why I kind of don't like these shows that kind of riff on these quote-unquote bad movies. Let me get a sip of this coffee here. I understand laughing at a film that is just like strange and it's bizarre, and you're like, I mean, if you want to say so bad it's good, fine. That's your prerogative. I don't think that's a thing. I think if you like it, you like it. I've seen many, many worse films than this. I've seen new films from 2025 that are much worse than Santa Claus Conquers the Martians. And you could say, Dan, how can that be? You have a 2025 film, you have nice high definition cameras, you have good acting, you have good production design. And yes, you're all correct on that. But those films, I am so incredibly disinterested with. I am bored, and I hate to even use that word, but there are just some films I watch where I'm like, man, I just want this to end. And that shows that what does it mean? What is so bad it's good? These are bad, like those are bad films because I'm just wanting it to be over. I talked about at the beginning of the episode this constant need to rush through everything. I want to finish this film. I want to finish this book. I want to eat, get to this restaurant and eat. I want to get home as fast, when I watch something like Santa Claus Conquers the Martians, I'm enjoying myself. I'm having fun with it because it is so strange and it is so silly. And I think that there's a certain culture around these kind of cult movies where it's almost encouraged to laugh at it. Again, to be mean spirited about it. I think that's something now where, and I'm not I people enjoy the mystery science theater stuff, and that's fine. I totally get it, but I think that has kind of put a certain idea into the culture of these bad movies of you're removing context, you're removing intent, you're removing any kind of shortcomings that may be in a otherwise pretty good film. I mean, this is an enjoyable film, and yeah, it's silly and it's dumb, but it's sort of like I don't I think the constant game of let's just make fun of these bad movies is so tiresome and it's so eye rolling. And I think now, especially with YouTube, there are so many and I don't watch like YouTube channels or anything like that. I mean, I watch like some stuff here and there, but I'm not like a YouTube like guy, which is ironic 'cause I have a YouTube channel. If I like my acquaintances' YouTube channels. I like hearing what they have to say, but there are so many YouTube channels that just revel in making fun of these movies of just look how stupid these movies are, look how stupid these people are, and it's like, man, if I just can't get behind that. This is not me being like, oh, I'm too highbrow for this. Definitely not. But I'm saying that when you're removing context, when you're looking at the film at face value, and you're not able to appreciate anything of it, you're just saying, oh, these are all the worst movies ever. It's like, man, I'm just not on board with that. That's not me raising my, or, putting my nose up and saying, oh, I'm not making fun of these movies. Because there's plenty of films that I watch, and I'm like, man, that's just so silly and weird. But if I'm enjoying it, then I can't call it bad. And I think the idea of like, oh, this is a bad movie because of like these shortcomings is like, man, I'm just not on board with that. And, people enjoy, the mystery science theaters and they enjoy the YouTube channels, and that's fine. I would never, tell anybody not to or encourage them not to. But I am also saying I think it's a bad way to look at movies. I think it's a bad way to kind of judge certain films without that added sort of like, not even just context, but what was the film's intent? Did it do it correctly? This is a very very childish film. Except and I say that, I mean, made for children. Now, let's say in the middle of Santa Claus Conquers the Martians, it's very silly, very lighthearted. Let's say in the middle of the movie you had a naked girl running around. You'd go, what? This is like a kids movie. Now you got this naked girl running around, and that's something where you go, okay, what is going on here? This isn't working for children at all because you just had a naked woman running around. But then it's the same, it's the same thing where it's like making fun of a Hallmark film or a Lifetime film. It's such low hanging fruit, and it's so shallow to act like I am better than this film. It's like, okay, well, people watch the Hallmark movies for a sense of comfort, for a sense of familiarity. There's not a lot of mix up in the plotting and the character stuff, and at the end they end up together. You watch these movies for a certain reason. So if you're just gonna sit back and go like, oh, these are all terrible, they're all the same thing. It's like, well, now you're removing why these movies get made. I was having a conversation with somebody, and we had a disagreement about the film Tenet, and they said, well, the film is bad because we don't know anything about this character, and my response was, the film is not about that character though. It's about this. It's about the mission. It's about what this character has to go on, and that's why in that film doesn't even have a name. He's the protagonist. The movie's not about him. It's about this other thing. So now you're calling the film bad. And if you don't like the film, that's just an example I throw out. If you don't like the film, I really don't care. I'm saying that now you're saying this. You're saying it's bad, but you have no context behind it. And if you have that context, you still think that, that's fine. That's your, that's your opinion. That's your goals. Whatever. I don't care. I'm not losing sleep over somebody disagreeing with me on a movie. But without that without that intent, without that context, you have a whole different idea of it. So Santa Claus Conquers the Martians, it's an ode to a different time of filmmaking when, you just kind of make these weird, silly movies. They play at the drive-in. I did want to get that AGFA Blu-ray set, which is an acquaintance of mine was talking about, and it really kind of turned me on to this film, into talking about it. I'd seen this film a couple years ago, so my memory's not the best, so I do apologize. But this collection is so fascinating that I definitely want to pick up. It is the Santa Claus Conquers the Martians and Other Holiday Hallucinations, and it has a bunch of short films and Santa Claus Conquers the Drive. And I should also say, it's called Santa Claus Conquers the Martians, but there's no conquering of the Martians. It should be Santa Claus Visits the Martians, or Santa Claus Helps the Martians. I guess there is one Martian who is conquered. He's kind of a bad guy, but that's such a later part of the film. I should also say what I found very funny that I didn't know. I was recently talking about the bizarre movie, which is Fun in Balloon Land, and I didn't realize that last month it has now come to Blu-ray, part of the Crazy Kids Video Party, which includes a couple other films, and AGFA is in part with Something Weird. So these are all coming from Something Weird, by the way. Like Fun in Balloon Land is from Something Weird. That's a source they had. So a lot of that stuff is coming from them. So I just love these time capsules. I love looking into, like even Fun in Balloon Land. It feels like a promotion for this balloon company, like this strange parade. And I talked about the narration, that being so bizarre. I talked about that a couple months ago, and actually, if you're interested to hear more about that movie, then keep an eye out on the YouTube channel. You can go to the YouTube channel and actually just see it there. I'm sure you can probably actually, if you were on YouTube or Spotify, and you just typed in Cozy Corner of Cinema, Fun in Balloon Land, I'm sure it would come up. Because I try to put the names of the films I talk about, not all of them, but the main films that I mention on in the description. But yeah, Santa Claus Conquers the Martians. It's strange, it's weird, but you know what? It's that charm that makes me smile. It's a film you throw on this time of the year. You show it to somebody who has never seen it, and they either think it's strange and cool, or they think it's very boring. And I don't know where I would fall on it again if I watched it again. So maybe I'll revisit it. Who knows? There's so much to do, and there's so much to watch that, admittedly, this is not a priority. But boy, oh boy, when it comes this time of the year, it will be in the general consensus. So that's going to do it for this episode, guys. Stay warm out there. Stay focused on your dreams, on your art. There's a lot of great films coming out. Just stay on top of it. I say it every week, but boy, I have nothing to. I always feel awkward kind of ending these episodes. I don't really know what to wrap it up with. Maybe I should have a catchphrase or something like that, like "Stay tuned." That'd be kind of cliche. Also, stay tuned. It's like the episodes are coming out, so whatever. Anyways, that's all I'm gonna say. So I'm gonna wrap it up again. You guys take care and stay warm.